Hey, hi everyone. I'm Alexis Williams, co-founder of Business Skills for Health Professionals, and welcome to the Beyond Clinical podcast. In this podcast, I'll be interviewing health professionals from diverse backgrounds who have moved into unconventional roles beyond clinical. We'll be hearing their stories and tips and hope that this inspires you to pursue unique career paths. Today is episode 25 of the podcast, and I'd like to introduce my guest, Carolyn Raikhlin. Carolyn, can you just say hello to everyone?
Hi, everyone. Hi, Alexis.
Hi, so great to see you. Before we get started, I just want to share a little bit about Carolyn's background. So, Carolyn is an experienced senior manager specializing in nutrition policy and regulatory affairs at Food, Health, and Consumer Products of Canada. A registered dietitian bringing over 18 years experience spanning the commodity and not-for-profit sectors and the consumer packaged goods industry. With a Master's of Applied Nutrition degree from University of Guelph and an MBA from Wilfrid Laurier University, Carolyn combines deep expertise in nutrition with strategic business insight. Her career began with roles at Dairy Farmers of Canada and Canada Beef, where she gained a solid foundation in the commodity sector and the important role of nutrition. She then spent more than 12 years at Unilever and Upfield Foods combined, where she advanced the consumer packaged goods industry, leading nutrition and health initiatives across the company's product portfolios. Carolyn is passionate about driving impactful policy changes and ensuring that food products align with the ever-changing consumer demands in the health space. She is committed to advancing public health through thoughtful science-based approaches to nutrition and food policy. So, welcome. Great to kind of hear your background. I know we were fellow grads from the same master's program at Guelph, which I didn't actually realize. So, small
Great.
world.
Thanks,
Awesome.
Alexis. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so I like to start out with just like a fun question about if you're listening to any podcasts lately and any ones that you're enjoying.
Yes, I would say from a professional standpoint, podcast, I would say my favorite right now is it's called Peter Attia Drive. I'm not sure if you're familiar
Yeah.
with Peter. Yeah, I finished his book, Outlive, and it was really interesting and certainly sort of that area, I think, as any health professional, it kind of you feel in the know, and he's always
Mm.
highlighting hot topics and sort of key areas of research. So I would say from a professional standpoint right now, that sort of, and then obviously on the personal side, more of the, true crime or
Yeah.
Dateline. Yeah,
Oh,
that's,
that's cool.
yeah.
Yeah, those are fun. I find the I was just talking to someone who likes like comedy podcasts, and I was like, oh, I've
Yes.
never thought of that. I
Yes.
think it's good to have a
So,
variety. Yeah. Awesome. So I'd love to hear your professional origin story and a little bit more about your career journey in your
yeah.
words.
Thanks, Alexis. Actually, funny story. When I was doing my master's, you had come in to talk to my
Oh,
class. You probably don't remember. So,
oh my gosh, yeah.
so it's funny that we're having this conversation now today.
Yeah.
Well, no, thank you so much for having me. I would say from a sort of my professional journey, I guess, I did my undergrad at Guelph in applied human nutrition, and then went on to do my master's of applied nutrition, as you said. And I think it was very clear during my master's of applied nutrition that I really wanted to focus in on sort of that maybe more of the public health side and more of if I could be so lucky to get into the food industry. And that was sort of
Mhm.
that approach, I think, at the end of my undergrad. And when it came time for that internship decision and whether to do my master's, it was really clear that an internship may have been a little bit too clinical for me
Mhm.
in looking at the program, and rightfully so. I think that that's what it should be. And so um, I think too, that whole undergrad experience really, it came to light that I kind of wanted to get into sort of that more of that business and industry sector. So I guess during my master's of applied nutrition, my professor had asked, obviously what all of our interests were. And I would say my placements were geared toward that, more of that public health space. And And then an ad came out from Dairy Farmers of Canada just around, conferences and help at their booth. Um, and I really jumped at it. And I thought, oh my gosh, I didn't even know that, a dietitians worked at dairy farmers, for example, or dietitians were in sort of that commodity space. And I think that really opened my eyes that, oh
Mhm.
wow, like this is something I think I would like to do. So my first job after graduating was with Dairy Farmers of Canada as a nutrition educator. And so I was there for about a year and then accepted a role at Beef Information Center.
Mhm.
So it's now called Canada Beef. And I was there for 3 years and I think it was really great because it really showed me that, that critical role I think a dietitian can play in the commodity space around nutrition policy and really shaping that food policy in Canada.
Mhm.
So after being there for about 3 years, I saw a job come up at Unilever, which was, I think it was, I remember it was only, I think, a 6-month contract. And it was really scary to, to jump into it. But I thought, if there's ever going to be a chance, this is,
Mhm.
really where I want to be. And so jumped on that. And then that 6-month contract kind of turned into about 10 years at Unilever, which was
Wow.
yeah, it just was sort of one of those things that just really sort of morphed and things changed within the business. And so there were some really awesome opportunities that came up. I would work down in the US, in New Jersey for a year, working on a special project for Lipton. I did my MBA part-time for 4 years of that 10-year span. And then following Unilever, then I accepted a role with Upfield Foods. So it's now called Flora Foods. And that's basically when Unilever sold off their spreads business globally. And
Mhm.
so I went with Upfield and was there for about 3 years and then realized I switch it up and accepted a job at Food, Health, and Consumer Products of Canada, and that's where I am today. And really doing sort of the nutrition policy, but as well regulatory affairs.
Wow, that's
Yeah.
awesome. Great to hear your journey kind of in your own words. And would you say there's anything that stands out to you that's contributed to your success in kind of moving through these roles?
I would say just, really just sticking to what you like,
Hmm.
um, and knowing yourself, being true to yourself. I think kind of goes back to the point around it was really clear in undergrad that I didn't think I was cut out for that clinical space. And
Yeah.
I felt really kind of out of my element, I think, being in,
Mm.
say, a clinical setting or a hospital setting. Whereas when I was in sort of that corporate setting, I really felt like that
Mm.
was the right fit for me. So I would
Mhm.
say yeah, it was just sort of listening and also talking to people, seeing and understanding what was out there. I had no idea there was the whole commodity side sector in
Yeah.
general, especially going through and then that sort of led me then to kind of the packaged goods sector, which is a whole other, I think, um,
Hmm.
sector in itself. So yeah.
Well, and I think it's interesting that you said it all kind of started with like volunteering for
Mhm.
helping at a conference booth. And I think
Yeah,
sometimes we don't realize the small like opportunities that come up can be the start of, just starting to make connections and learn more about the
that's right.
people working in maybe a different area. So
That's
I think
right.
that's like something to encourage listeners if you're, looking for a way to start networking, like those can be
Yeah.
really great opportunities.
Yes.
What would you say has been the role of like mentors, coaches, or community kind of on your journey?
Yeah, I would say, that's a really a simple question for me and that it was huge. I had one mentor and I still have this same mentor. And in fact, my professor, when I was doing my master's, put me in touch with this particular mentor who's also a dietitian. And I've we still talk to this day, and I really just have so much, admiration, and there was so much support throughout, and I think guidance, and also too that mentor role is so critical, especially in earlier years when you
Hmm.
sort of doubt yourself or you think, oh, like I don't know if that's the right fit for me, or I'm not sure, and it's sort of that sounding board that I think is
Hmm.
so critical. And so I would like to think that as time has gone on, it's become more mutual, our relationship, and
Yeah.
then something that my mentors maybe gaining a little bit from me now. It was always a little bit one-sided earlier on, but no, I would say it was a huge and has been a huge part of the success um, and just sort of giving me that confidence, I think, too, and in the
Hmm.
roles and sort of having that foresight has really helped me.
I think you bring up such a good point that I see a lot of is confidence. Like confidence is
Yes.
it's hard to get that in ourselves sometimes. And that's where I think a really good mentor or coach can really just help you see all of the things that you bring to the table and just give you a bit more confidence. So I think
Yeah,
so important.
absolutely. And I find too, I don't know about you, but when I talk to other people and if one's say applying for a job and you can list off all these things about that person. It's so easily. It's so
Hmm.
easy to tell someone to be like, oh, you're great at this, and don't forget to mention
Hmm.
this, and what about that? But then when it comes to yourself, you're almost like, I don't even know. There's just
Hmm.
this. So it's so important to have that support and that other sort
Hmm.
of voice.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, like that external feedback. People
yeah,
who've, maybe worked with you or,
that's right.
supervised you or seen you in different settings and can really bring that out
That's
in the
right.
story that you tell. I think that's super important. Did you run up like against any gaps in terms of like knowledge when you moved from, well, you kind of went right into food industry, I guess, but
Yeah.
like where were the gaps you found in terms of your maybe what training did you need? And I know you did your MBA, so maybe
Yeah.
that was a big part of it, but
Yeah, you know what? I would say sort of two things. I would say I felt a knowledge gap when I was in the clinical setting. So I didn't share this, but when I was working at Dairy Farmer as my first job, I was supplementing also. I was working in long-term care 1 day a week.
Mhm.
And I would say that's when I felt really sort of, there's a gap there. But then switching gears from the more in the corporate side, I would say no real knowledge gaps, but I think again, I hate to harp on it, but I think it's just that confidence. And when I did my MBA, it gave me that confidence of that there wasn't this big unknown so much
Mhm.
that you sort of you get to know the lingo and you get to know the what is being talked about cross-functionally. So you do have a general understanding, but it was perhaps getting my MBA that kind of solidified it, and it gave me the confidence then to really utilize it and utilize those learnings.
Mhm. Yeah, one of the tips I give a lot of people if they're starting in a new role in a company is
Mhm.
like really just understanding the total working of the business and like the business
Yes,
model and not just focusing on your area, like making sure you make an effort to really understand like cross-functionally the big picture. Because I think
yes,
that becomes even more important in a business-oriented role.
absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah. So what do you love most about what you're doing right now?
I have to say probably everyone says this about their job, but I would say every day is so different and
Mhm.
it really is unpredictable. And I would say even maybe more so now too with, the government and that. And, we certainly, um, work closely with what Health Canada is doing and really watching. And
Mhm.
I would say I love that aspect that there's, a lot of long-standing files that we continue
Mhm.
to work on and will continue to work on. However, there's things that arise daily that
Mhm.
largely impact many of the members I work with. And so I would say that would be the first piece. It's always sort of different. And then secondly, um, in my previous roles, I've always worked on sort of, one portfolio, a food portfolio, or there's a beverage portfolio, and you sort of, it intimately, and you're always sort of zeroed in on those products. And I would say this particular role, we work with, I think it's over 100 members, and they
Wow.
all have food and beverage portfolios. And so there's all, the amount of learnings and really understanding it's really, I feel like I've only sort of scratched the surface, and things come up that you think, oh wow, I would have never even thought that, because I'm not working for that company,
Right.
obviously. I think that's what I love most too about my job, is that the variety, and really sort of putting myself in the members' shoes, and really
Mhm.
trying to help and assist.
Yeah. Yeah, because you're kind of servicing like the food industry more broadly now
That's
versus,
right.
like you said, like working at an individual company. And even at a big company like Unilever, like you would probably only
Yeah,
have like a portfolio of the
that's
products. So
right. That's right. Or you're only
yeah.
working on some brands, and then the other team, is working on the other brands and that. So yeah,
Mhm.
exactly.
So now you kind of have that bigger picture, which is cool.
Yeah, that's
What
right. Yeah.
what kind of like courses or programs do you partake in to develop your skills, would you say?
Yeah. So I would say the last couple of years I haven't been to I haven't, other than conferences. I know that's sort of
Yeah.
I think that's kind of been the last couple of years, is trying to go to key conferences that certainly are going to um help me stay in the know and help me stay up to date. And I would say, I just this past December, there was an excellent food regulatory summit in Toronto. Actually, it was 2 days, and it was sort of it's the first conference I've been to in a while where it was really, I guess for lack of a better word, hands-on. They were
Mm.
all case studies, and it was excellent in that it was just a different way of learning than, say, a conference where the expert comes up and presents, the
Mhm.
science, and
Yeah.
that, which is also critical, I think, too, for our roles as a health professional. But yeah, just, I think, really trying to stay on top of things, through conferences. I would say also too, trying to keep up with my past. I would say, I almost want to say colleagues, but from alumni from my MBA, and that we do try
Hmm.
and meet for dinner every couple months or so.
Yeah.
It's really busy, obviously, but it's really, and everyone has a different background. There's a person in finance, there's a person in the energy sector, but we all have really the commonality is that we all went to school and we did this degree
Hmm.
together, and it's sort of an opportunity to kind of share that, professional development, and, so that's sort of another way just to stay connected, and also stay, it doesn't always have to be health, nutrition,
Yeah.
there could be other. So that, I always find that interesting.
I think that's a really good point, actually, because you kind of talked about two different scenarios. Like one is like a very specific conference for your
Yeah.
area, and I do see a lot of value in finding niche conferences because I find
Mhm.
generic conferences can be good for certain like
Yep.
background knowledge. But if I think about my own career, like the most impactful conferences I went to were the retail dietitian
I was just
ones,
gonna
which
say,
is, we were just
yeah.
talking about that's the last time we saw each other was at one of those. Um, but also on the flip side, the value of connecting outside of healthcare with like people from a variety of different backgrounds, I think is also like you can't underestimate the
That's right.
value in doing something like that because we can get really insular within like
Yeah,
say our profession. And there's a lot of value in just like having, conversations with people who don't have anything to do with health because you also kind of understand like the real world and like what people are
that's
actually
right.
concerned about and talking about. So,
That's right. That's right. It
Yeah.
kind of brings you back down a little bit. You're a little bit more grounded. And I find too, so many of the skills that, we all have, they're obviously transferable. So it's also sort of keeping that open mind and that
Yeah.
you don't have to always be zeroed in on, specific skill sets or specific jobs or, there's really
Yeah.
a lot out there.
I think that's really useful too as you
Yeah.
start to like if someone's kind of getting into wanting to move beyond clinical, like
Hmm.
most people, the biggest struggle is finding opportunities. And I think
Yes.
that's where, again, getting outside of like, the profession is really important. Like getting
Yeah,
out to, places where there's other businesses starting up and, getting
that's
making those
right.
connections can be so valuable because you never know like who you'll meet.
That's right. And I will say too, from like my experience, and this is just obviously just from one just from me, but I I do find some of the companies like and I will reference Unilever that they were if you find yourself at a really great company, they will give you those all of those opportunities
Hmm.
and more internally. And it's sort of the same attitude if you're looking for a new job, but you're just looking within and having sort of that roadmap and
Yeah.
finding someone that's going to help you sort of
Hmm.
champion that roadmap, I think is critical. And most companies do. They
Yeah.
recognize the importance of keeping and retaining employees. And so it's
Hmm.
really having, I think, starting too internally within yourself and
Yeah.
within your company right now and maybe I know at Unilever there was discussion, well, would you want to try marketing or would you want to try
Hmm.
going and like there were certain roles that yeah like that would be awesome to try and it's sort
Yeah.
of a little bit of more of a safety that you're with a
Yeah.
company that you've been working with that they already sort of believe in you, I guess. And so
Hmm.
I would say that would be a good starting point for someone who's trying to kind of change it up to look within.
Yeah. I think that's such good advice. And I would have given similar advice. Like when you're working in a large company,
Yeah.
there are a ton of internal opportunities.
Yes.
And I think sometimes too, when people are looking at where do they start, like sometimes we need to be open to maybe starting in kind of like an entry level role within one of those
Right.
companies, because once you get in the door, you can make it what you want with,
That's right.
internal networking just is so much easier than trying to kind of break
That's right.
into maybe one of those environments. And I certainly saw that with when I had a large team of retail dietitians, like
Yeah.
many of them went into marketing, product development. One went into finance, like it was quite
Yes.
broad.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of transferable skills. And once people know you and trust you,
That's
like
right.
the sky's kind of the limit within an
That's right.
organization. So that's great advice.
Absolutely.
Yeah. If there was one thing you could share with your early career self, what would it be?
Um, I would say just go for it.
Yeah.
That sounds a little bit cheesy, but I would say that that's the truth and really not to get in your head.
Hmm.
That would be sort of my one piece. And then the second piece too is um, when you had asked me to be on this podcast, I was sort of reflecting on some of, just points in my career. And one of the ones that kind of comes up is sort of the feedback given and, throughout your career, given constructive feedback. And it's awesome because you can really sort of, you work on it or you know, and I'll give one particular instance when one of my reviews, my director had given me the feedback that one of the business partners that I had worked with on a project said, I wasn't as assertive as I should have
Hmm.
been in the business, in this corporate setting. I should be more assertive and that. And I really took it to heart. Like I really took it sort of like, oh, this negative,
Hmm.
okay, I'm going to, and I remember I took, a couple um, I took a course during my MBA too. It was, I forget what it was called, but it was wasn't a negotiation. course, but it's not coming to me. But it was really to zero in on me being more assertive and really asserting myself in these conversations and that same director that gave me the feedback, he said to me, just be yourself. Like you don't need to change just because you
Hmm.
were given that feedback. It doesn't mean that you need to change yourself dramatically. It was just more for you to be aware of. And I
Yeah.
think my point is that I'll admit my approach may be very different than the next person, but that's where I feel comfortable and that sort
Hmm.
of, and you would probably say the same, Alexis, that, you've had your roles for certain qualities and certain things you've put forward, and that's because you were really truly sticking to your
Yeah.
roots, being yourself. And I think that that's the key because
Hmm.
you get hired because
Yeah.
because you're being yourself, and that's really the all you can be. So that's sort
I
of
think it speaks to that authentic, like kind of being
yeah,
authentically you. It sounds cheesy,
yes.
but
It
I had
sounds
something
cheesy,
similar
but
happen. You just brought that up for me. And like,
yeah,
I was
yeah,
given feedback like basically as a leader, you're too nice. Like,
yes,
and I was
yeah,
like, well, I don't want to change that. Like, if
yeah,
that's what is required, then this
yeah.
isn't like, this is a
It's not.
challenging situation to be in. So
That's
I
right.
think, yeah, you have to take feedback maybe with a grain of salt.
That's right.
Like look for opportunities to grow and develop like you did. Like I think
Yes,
we can all strengthen our negotiating
for
skills. And that
sure.
is a really important skill I find working in a large organization to
Yeah,
just like, because there's so many competing priorities
that's
that
right.
you kind of have to be like firm on your goals and, negotiate with other stakeholders all the time.
That's right.
But you got to do it in the way that you're comfortable with. And I
That's
think
right.
that's just so important. So yeah,
Absolutely. And there's a
that's,
lot of different ways to get to that end result.
yeah.
Being nice or not being nice.
Yeah. Well, we have a course on negotiation in our
Yep.
program and difficult conversations, and it's exactly that.
Yes.
It's like it's actually kind of orienting towards collaborative negotiation
Yes.
because I think usually that works well in most
Most
professional
of
settings
that's right.
versus like more of a kind of negative
Yeah,
negotiating, like tactics you might use if you're buying a car or something. That's totally different than within a
that's
work
right.
setting. So.
That's right. Exactly.
Um, so yeah, just to wrap up, like, is there any other advice you'd give to our listeners who are interested in finding a career beyond clinical?
Yeah, I would just say, further to just being yourself, just really put yourself out there. I think we all find networking maybe a little bit awkward, but just cold calling people or reaching out, especially when I think about my younger self or as a student, where you can really see yourself somewhere.
Hmm.
I really see myself working at that company. I really believe in, that hospital, the values, or,
Hmm.
you feel that alignment, really act on that because that really
Yeah.
shows and it really comes through.
Yeah.
I know when I'm, talking to or interviewing people and that it shows. So
Hmm.
I would say to just stay aligned with yourself and be yourself.
Yeah. No, that's so true. That's great
Yeah.
advice.
Yeah.
Thank you. Well, I hope everyone enjoyed hearing from Carolyn and you're feeling inspired. I just want to wrap up with a couple of housekeeping things. So, within Business Skills for Health Professionals, we have two exciting ways to help you. If you want to make that career transition to something new, we have our Beyond Clinical Career Transition Coaching Program. If you are a health professional already working outside of clinical, I also have a network and membership program. We gather every month and kind of just troubleshoot things in the business world that maybe you haven't come up against before. So you can find out more about both of these by visiting the links in the show notes. And also, if you love the show, please consider rating, reviewing it, and sharing it with a friend. So, yeah, thank you so much for joining. It was great catching up.
Thank you, Alexis. I really appreciate it.
All right. Well, have a good rest of your day.
Thank you. You too.
Bye.